be 25 next year and I like the Mega Drive. No, I don't think I was born in the wrong generation. Let's talk about some games for it. I had this random thought when I started writing the script for my Sonic Drift 2 review, and yeah, it is those times when making a review of something that just sprung on your mind is quicker than doing one that you put on your planner long ago. Sorry to Red GT4, but I'll get you too someday! The Mega Drive from Sega, better known in America as the Genesis, not due to some dispute over a different company as some might have believed. This is a successor to the Mark III/Master System, being based somewhat on the System 16 board, meaning that it offers experience close to the arcade versions. First released in Japan in 1988, it didn't have the same success as the Super Famicom or even the PC Engine there, but elsewhere like the US, Europe and Brazil to boot, it was the thing to own. The 2-year head start helped sales and offers some of the best classics like Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, the bloody port of Mortal Kombat, and more. It almost won the so-called console war in America before the SNES narrowly beat them to the punch with Donkey Kong Country, signaling the decline of Sega's console department. Still, it was a huge success in Europe, especially in my home country. I own one, surprisingly, specifically the Model 2 Mega Drive with the red buttons. I used to have the Model 1 before I left Portugal, but that's gone now. I actually find the Model 2 more appealing than the Model 1. When it comes to the design, I always love the cut just of being in the middle, like most of the consoles back in the day. It's almost like a standard. But this isn't a review on the system. I'm not much of a hardware person unless it's PC related. Instead, I'm going to review 4 classic races for the system, which may or may not be great to begin with. It's fascinating to see how racing games in the 16-bit era ended up like, from top-down to chase cam illusions to the early 3D rendering. So join me as I say, man, I have a really nice butt. The console-exclusive sequel to one of Sega's many arcade racing sensations, this time in collaboration with the late Ayrton Senna, a Brazilian F1 legend released 2 years before his untimely death. Thanks exclusively for video games, and also Tectoy, Sega's Brazilian distributor, for the game's idea. It's also released on a Game Gear Master System, but you read the title already. I don't know about you, but the menu music reminds me of bass telemetry from Forza 3. It can't just be me, can it? You have a selection of free modes, GP, World Championship, and free practice. The last one is just free time trials around tracks, World GP is where you expect, racing 60 events against 15 other drivers, and GP is where you race around 3 original tracks, including Senna's own Kart track. If it's your first time playing, I recommend going to free practice first because the controls are rather finicky. For graphics, they still don't know how to counter the arcade version of the first game. There's barely any scenery in the foreground, gameplay is at half the frame rate, and there's just too much information displayed. It's more crowded than the Game Gear version. As for sound, I think it's a downgrade from even the console port of the first game. I don't like the digitized engine noise, the skid sounds are irritating, and the music. What happened there? At least the downshift noise is good. So I said that the controls are rather finicky, right? You just said that less than 40 seconds ago! Standard for a Mega Drive game, you hold B for acceleration and A for braking. And to change gears if you're in one of the manual settings, you have to press down to shift up and vice versa. Now, I'm playing on an emulator with a 360 controller and, how do I put this, the T-pad sucks. It's like, whenever I take a turn I might shift down, which is irritating. I'm sure the problem would be remedied if I played with an actual Mega Drive controller, but joypad criticism aside, if you want some good cornering and not crash and burn, you have to turn your cut before the corner starts to form, much like real life. Although for some reason you mostly don't go out and out in corners. I read that Ayrton Senna helped the development team make the game's handling more realistic, but I find it bullshit because you can still go through most corners at full speed and get sub-minute lap times compared to real life. Plus, you go through chicanes like this at times. I had much trouble traversing this pony Silverstone in the Forza game. This game makes it look like a breeze. You can only do so much with this kind of engine, so in essence, it is still an arcade game. Fairly enjoyable though. I really like experimenting methods of tackling corners in 1-ups, and you can still drive out the flagfolk and launch them into space. Sweet. But this is a racing game, and racing games typically have opponents to race against, so let's go to Senna GP. In every race, you get to do a qualifying race a la Gran Turismo 1. One lap beginning with a standard start. Ah yes, my favorite. After that, it's off to the race. The opponents are sometimes a bitch to pass, and either there can be many in front of you, or you're a narrow racetrack like the USA track. Well, at least you don't make a full stop if you hit someone from behind. Frustrating, but not like setting a drift, mind you. If you learn the track enough during warm-up, you won't have a problem getting first, or at the very least on the top 8 after qualifying, since you won't have much trouble passing the cars. Too bad there's no practice section for these tracks, so code with its controls. Qualifying and winning these races are trial and error the first time you play them. The third track is a doozy to drive around even. There are narrow corners there, this section, and it's a narrow track overall. No wonder this reminds Senna of Monaco. And speaking of Senna, it can get really annoying whenever he encourages you during a race, like saying, "Come on," or "Keep it up." It's only an issue in Senna GP though. Winning all the races grants you the super license and a boot to the title screen. Like I said, practice mode is where you race around tracks alone to have a feel of the tracks, and World Championship which pits you against 15 tracks around Phoenix, Interlagos, Imola, Monaco, Montreal, Mexico City, Magny-Cours, Silverstone, Hockenheimring, Hungaroring, Spa, Monza, Estoril, Montmello, Suzuka, and Adelaide. Woof. And much like the first game, you get to race a season or two full of twists, like challenging rivals, moving up the rankings to join the Madonna team, and hoping that gets sent back to the mid-card in the second season. Though that's only when you race to the Master difficulty. Beginner difficulty on the other hand is just a standard championship. No jumping onto better or worse cars during a season, no pit crew comments, no rivals, and there's only one season, which means that completing it gets you booted right back to the title screen as well. Super Monaco GP2 was rather samey to me. While it has a few improvements like the curves not slowing you down and the addition of Senna GP, there is not much anything different from the first game. Sure, the racing is still great and championship mode is challenging in master mode, but I feel like this is a quick cash grab despite the effort from the team and advisories from Senna. Reminds me of Gran Turismo 4 to 5, maybe 6 to fit the Senna theme. Remember when I reviewed Super Hang-On a few years back? Don't! Remember when they've always been shit, stop it! Road Rash is a game about dealing with said type of injury that also serves as a teaching tool. Nah, I'm fucking with you, it's about bikes and violence. It's like Need for Speed with bikes, before Need for Speed was even a thing, and it came with this stupid cartridge design because the game was too cheap to buy Sega stuff despite being a licensed developer. Damn, that's a nice title screen. You could pick one of 5 tracks you like to race, much like Mega Man, except it doesn't have a recommended order for a bearable playthrough. Press C and you get to change your name, and oh no, it has a password system. The previous game I reviewed has a battery save feature for World Championship, but here, you need to input a password to continue your progress, and it's this long. I can't tell if that's a 0 or a no. It's a combination with writing in a machine font. At least there's emulation and save states. For a Genesis game, it looks really good. The sprite work and the scaling is splendid, though a frame rate killer even when you're alone on the road. The hills look like it has a 3D effect, which makes the game a bit more immersive as well as challenging gameplay-wise, what with the jumps. The faces before and after the race look fine. It tried to be realistic, though this cup looks rather cartoony. When it comes to sound, whatever you do, don't disable the music, because if you do, you're gonna have to hear this buzzing noise as you race. Speaking of music, composed by Rob Hubbard, they sound great. There is a problem when it comes to the volume balance though. Half the songs are loud as hell and I find it unbearable when hearing with headphones. In this game, you race against a bunch of other bikers on long Californian stretches of roads. B and A are for gas and brake respectively, of course, but you can also beat other riders with C. Threatening their stamina will make them fall. Hell, some bikers have weapons you can manage to pick up with the right timing. It controls great too. Well, depending on the bike you chose, their response is very intuitive. Though you have to be quick on the corners plus the chicanes, the game doesn't fuck around at all. You also have cars driving back and forth, signs and trees on the sides, animals on the way, erratic riders, and even cops on the way. Even when you're in first place and away from the pack, you're still in danger of losing, so you better not screw up and bail out, otherwise you have to run to your bike, pick it up, and get back on your feet, losing precious seconds. No respawns, baby! Man, tourist surfing isn't too brave for that. Plus, braking is actually recommended in the later stages if you want to get through these messy situations as well. Road rash is more realistic than I thought. You earn some cash depending on the position you finish at, so you can buy or at least trade faster bikes by pressing C at the results screen. Why not just put in the track selection? That's just really odd. Beware though, some bikes prioritize speed over handling instead of a good balance, meaning you'll most likely bail out or crash to the side, so better judge the corner's way before turning. Regardless, after winning or getting a podium in all the races, you move on to the next level, which the opponents will get faster and harder, and the tracks get longer. By the time I got to the second level with a faster bike, I witnessed Forza levels of gaps between me and the first place rider. Thankfully, it is possible to actually overtake them, you just need some patience and finesse when avoiding drivers. By the time I got to level 3 and bought a better bike, it got easy. Well, when passing the opponents of course, it's a long road away to the finish, so have fun avoiding all the stuff I've mentioned. And from level 4, the game just throws everything at you, like fuck! It just goes to the point where it gets frustrating. Even as someone playing in an emulator with a reverse feature, most of the time it feels like a puzzle trying to figure out how to get past this part without bailing out. Even with a faster bike, it still takes so long to pass the first place bike. Fuck me. Also, trying to pass the bottom opponents can actually get glitchy, like hitting someone would jump me to the other side of the road and bail out in a blink of an eye. And don't get me started with the 5th level races, where the final stretches have the descending parts that blind you from oncoming traffic, as if the hell's weren't enough. But alas, after 25 grueling races, you reach the end, and you're now part of the Vet Raiders. Now it's up to you to keep on racing to get the top score, or stop playing it altogether. Alright, returning it to Blockbuster. Road Rash was a good game, if infuriating. It's a really challenging game, way more so in the final stages. It doesn't help that it only has a password feature, could be worse. Still, with the commercial and critical success of the game, Road Rash became a series throughout the 90s, with sequels to the Mega Drive, including a World Tour game with digitized graphics, and the infamous 32-bit version featuring crude caricatures, cheesy cutscenes, and the licensed soundtrack to boot, before Wipeout came along. Sadly, it went downhill after the third Genesis game with mediocre attempts to go full 3D, but regardless, it's a well-shared racing series that many fans claim for a return, so much so that someone made a spiritual successor to it. And it all happened because EA thought making a Mario and Andretti game like that on the NES was a good idea, until proven otherwise. Alright, time for the next game. What the hell? And now one from the Brits. Moving up to the top is Micro Machines 2 from Supersonic Software, published by Codemasters in 1994. In PAL regions only, except the DOS version. This review was long overdue for 3 years, my friends, and I'm glad to cover it right now. While it was also released on the SNES, the PC, Game Gear, and Game Boy, the Mega Drive version is unique for having 2 additional control ports in the cartridge. This is what the codies call a J-card, made for easy 4-player or even 8-player action, controller sharing included. Worry not, we're not finished with unusual cartridge design yet. We're Codemasters, and we've single-handedly created this game. Yup, just us. We didn't get help from anybody. Seriously, why was Supersonic not credited by name in the Mega Drive version? You get to either play head-to-head, standard races, time trials, and Super League, where you must win points to move on to the next tier. It's like football, only not. While challenge is just standard racing, head-to-head is different. Your objective is to go far ahead of your opponent until you reach the screen end to earn a point. Get enough to fill this bar, or you complete 3 laps with the most color balls and you move on to the next race. And like the previous game, you get to pick a character. It doesn't change a lot in the races, not even the car's look, but it's there, and the characters have some funny personalities from the looks of it. Oh, I sure hope that's not Jeremy Clarkson! Any Brits out there watching this remember Bad Influence? You know, that show about video game and technology news and reviews in the early to mid-90s, presented by this Andy bloke, this other Andy bloke, and Violet Berlin, who looked like me in the early seasons. Oh shit, she's in this game. Can you say conflict of interest? Probably not. For graphics, they're quite colorful, they do pop even in the most dankest of places. Plus, clever object placement just before the corners in most tracks, like the bathtub track for the dragsters. It's always convenient when the game tells you that you're always driving the red one during single player. Audio is great too, the engine noises aren't grating, even the opponents doing head to head despite sounding weirder. And would you believe me that this game did digitized sounds better than Super Monaco GP2? Like man, the skid noises sound like it's doing a little tune and I like it. Music is only played in the menus and the bonus game and they're fine. It has the trademark Mega Drive guitar sounds which can sound great to some, but I like it, especially the track selection song. Now, this may seem like a fun and cheery game, except oh fuck, it's hard as balls! The tracks tend to have sharp corners as well as annoying hazards and bank rolls in the beach tracks. Like the previous game, track memorization is key to progress. As the camera is stationed this close, you'll most likely get caught by surprise when you reach the corner the first time. Made worse when you're ahead of the rival in the head-to-head mode. Not only are the tracks hard, so do the toys. Controlling the vehicle is simple but hard to master. For one, the handling is rather sensitive. They tend to steer so fast that you might end up falling or hitting something. And don't expect this game being a no brakes thrill. Much like Road Rash, braking is also recommended with technically sharp corners as well as correcting jump length. Why did I have this mentality in arcade games where if I brake I mess up? The opponents are asinine too, they are either slightly slower or slightly faster depending on the vehicle, which can be problematic when driving dump trucks coupled with the spinning corn cobs. They make some of the tracks in head-to-head mode a pain. Thankfully it has a light system and you can earn one by winning 3 times in a row and run over 30 cars in a monster truck before time runs out. It's really fortunate that it's much easier than this watery mess from the first game. The track list is the same in challenge mode as is head-to-head mode, and the final race of them is a windy-ass track. Oh, I haven't had enough of that, seriously! But Super League mode has its own set, including a boat race where you go straight down a flowing river, which loops itself every lap, so like Cruising World Circuit mode. And who thought it was a good idea to put the toilet truck in Division 4? It's really short, and you drive a dragster, meaning that it's almost impossible to win this race. And then there's time trial mode, which is, you know, you can either drive a track in 1 or 3 laps and that's a lot. Micro Machines 2 is a lot better than the first game, as you're expecting a sequel. Don't let the colorful visuals fool you though, because this is a highly demanding game to get through. There's fast cars, blind turns, aggressive opponents, and the danger of falling down in some tracks. The jumping difficulty is really drastic by the time you get past the first round, so I'm not sure if I recommend it. I do recommend the game for the multiplayer though, whether it be classic racing or tournament in the party play mode. While some had to wait for the third game to be released, the Mega Drive version received 2 updated versions in a short time. There's Turbo Tournament 96, released in 95. Hey, you're not FIFA! And Military in 96, which unsurprisingly puts a heavy emphasis on military vehicles that you can shoot at other opponents. Both of these versions have updated music, graphics, and new and hard sets to get through. Shame they're only available in Europe, like all the console and handheld versions of 2, only made worse for being Mega Drive exclusive. Okay, what's next? Oh good, a straight port! Virtual Racing, another huge arcade sensation from Sega back in the 90s, only surpassed by Daytona USA, because of course, it was well known for its fast 3D graphics at the time, as well as its enjoyable gameplay and pleasant aesthetic to boot. So it came as a shock to most that it received a port on the Mega Drive. It helps that it has additional hardware, the SVP chip, the first and only time it can implement it. What doesn't help is the price, costing over $100 at launch. And the cartridge looks like this to boot. Even first parties tend to have funky card designs. It is taller due to said hardware and anything comparable with some clone systems, including Majesto's Genesis 3. Hell, it doesn't even work with a 32X attached, though the deluxe version makes it redundant. Well, it ticks some boxes. A track mode, track selection, pit start at Big Forest. It's faithful to say the least. Let's start our race, shall we? I recommend going manual since you get smoother revving. I quite like the aesthetic here, not as much as the arcade version, but hey, glad they managed to cram this much 3D in a 16-bit cartridge, with some additional fingers of course. Sure, the frame rate isn't big stuff, but it's still smoother than hard revving on the system. There, it's like I'm playing GTA 4 on a mid-tier PC from 2007. Sound is mediocre, it has noisy digitized sounds, mostly blasting to your ears. Music is fine, I guess. During the race, you hear them whenever you pass a checkpoint, pit in, pit out, finish the race, etc. Why do most sound bits fade out like in the arcade original is beyond me. Either way, the 32X versions are better. 1, 2, 3, go! Man, does it play a lot like Burnout 1. Of course, this is a standard racer with no gimmicks at all, which means the C button would have been useless, but it works as a viewpoint change button in the future, now standardized in almost all 3D racing games. Get it? Sega patented it so that auto developers had to pay for it until a court case that boiled down to Star Wars did it! It's 5 laps around the track with time extensions and stupid AI. That's your premise. As for controlling your car, Jesus Christ, get it together. Turning your car is just so inconsistent. Either you get a good turn or you look like you're not turning at all, meaning that you're gonna get understeer a lot. It's really hard to turn in this corner in Acropolis without causing your car to spin out. You know it's an arcade racer when it doesn't replicate an actual F1's handling. And that it was playable in the arcades. And as a little tongue-in-cheek on Sega said, whenever you crash, it plays this silly animation of the car flipping and landing just right. Even if it's just a moderate touch, bang! Self high five! If you're driving in manual, you use up and down on the D-pad to change gears, much like SMGP, but what's this? The game actually has slipstreaming? Why did I find this out just now? There's only 3 tracks to the cartridge, and these themselves have a pattern. They have 2 sections where you can just go flat out, and 1 that you have to brake. The tracks are nice to drive through, the hard sections are, well, hard, and with these controls is an understatement. What isn't an understatement is claiming Acropolis is the expert track, when really the most difficult track I went through was the medium Bay Bridge track. There's these sudden turns, witty corners, and narrow freeway entrances that take a lot to get used to in your race. Darn, you've went the understeer, this bunny Acropolis is much easier to tackle than this. And that's virtual racing on the Mega Drive, everyone! Yup, worth every penny. While the game was great, unfortunately this is very much as straightforward the arcade version with a time trial added for good measure. There's no additional modes regardless, unlike in Super Monaco GP, and frankly you're gonna finish it in less than an hour. Thankfully, Sega released an updated port, Virtual Racing Deluxe, a pregnancy later, with cleaner graphics, better music, and additional tracks and cars to boot. On the 32X. At least it's smoother, but despite more content, it's still the same old virtual racing. But if that isn't good enough for you, you also have the standard version published by Tomori Interactive, which actually has some sort of a career mode. But I'd be going beyond the Mega Drive if I actually cover it, so let's stop here. Boy, it sure was fun going back to the 16-bit era. Almost made me forget about newfangled modern-ass games as I was reviewing them. Thankfully, I just got an Xbox One as a little Christmas gift for myself. Sure, it's not new or anything, but I've always wanted an 8th-gen console since they were announced, and I really don't want to feel left out from the average gamer audience. They still make games for it as I speak, so let's see what I missed out on after all these years. So anyone up for Crush Hour?